So happy to be here. This is wonderful. I have to say, the whole distinguished address title is quite daunting, but I've got over that now, and I'm ready. So I had this idea. I thought of a nice turn of phrase. I thought, getting going to letting go. I thought that was a nice, elegant phrase. Of course, the implication is it covers my entire career, which, as Heather's just reminded me, is damn nearly 50 years. Blimey, nearly 50 years. So it's quite a lot to squeeze into to a half an hour, and there's quite a lot of things I'd like to cover. I want to talk about, if I remember, about serendipity and chance, which are very important. I want to talk about the simple joy of creation, which I think George has already referred to. I hope to touch on how a commercial endeavour can sort of naturally grow out of a purely artistic one. I will talk about the inheritance of ideas, because that's very dear to me, important to me. And finally, at the end of all that, I want to talk a bit about employee ownership, which is as a business goal, which is a thing that we've done, as Heather was telling you a couple of years ago, and of which I'm very proud. And so I'll talk about that. Oh, and as I go along, I also thought it would be polite to scatter credits here and there to the other people that have made all this possible. So I decided to start not at the beginning, not with the getting going, nor yet with the letting go. I decided to start right in the middle. Now, here we have the youthful Nick Park with his first Oscar, with Aardman's first Oscar as well. And I do realise, as I say that, that's quite a good thing to be able to say, actually. Not just we won an Oscar, but our first Oscar, the first of several. So this is Nick with his Oscar. And I feel, for me, it's like in the middle of our story. And that's to say that we as a company, as a creative studio, we got going. We got ahead of steam. We had a reputation. And prior to that, there were the scrabbling around years, the nearly going bust years, the taking on anything at all that had any income attached to it. There were those years. And then gradually, as I suggest, over sort of about 10 years, we got this confidence. We became a small community. I feel there were about 8 or 10 of us when Nick won the first Oscar. Small community. And in truth, that was perhaps only a quarter of the way through Aardman's story, but I'm still calling it the middle because it was so important to us, because, as I say, we'd reached not a plateau. A plateau is not a good word. That suggests complacency. We'd reached a sort of a fixed point. We'd reached a point of confidence. Now, the film that won the Oscar, I'd like to show you a brief clip of Nick's film. So play that clip, please.
If you try to compare the situations and the environment that you live here with the environment that you live in Brazil, there is a big difference. Here, you live in a very small place with all the technological advances possible. You have everything sorted out, double glazing, your heating and everything in Brazil, but you don't have space. In Brazil, you have space, although you don't have all this technological, double glaze and things like that, and but you have space. And we need space to live. We need space to feel that we are part of the world and not a kind of piece of object in a box.
So there we go. Creature Comforts, Nick Park's film, and our first Oscar. And, and we were hilariously ill-prepared for that, I would say. Certainly my tuxedo certainly came from Oxfam. And had seen better years. I'm not sure where Nicky got his. Nick may have bought his. No, hired it, I'm sure. And so there we were in Los Angeles with this short, but I must say glorious film. And we won the Oscar, and then we hadn't the faintest idea what to do. And now, as an seasoned pro, I know that what you do is you briefly attend the dinner afterwards, the governor's ball, and then you rush out as quickly as possible to some, not one but several fancy parties. That's the thing to do. But we didn't know about that, so we went to the governor's ball with the Oscar. We sat there, had our dinner, and then discovered that everyone else had gone because they'd all dashed off to parties, and we had no parties to go to. So we went back to the hotel where at least they were kind enough to open the bar again for us and give us some champagne. So we weren't expecting this. We never made films to win Oscars, for heaven's sake. We made films for their own sake. But what an amazing development that was. So Nick, the director, I've given him my first credit because the simple truth is that his joining a company, which was, I think in 84, 85, I think it was crucial, so crucial to the shape and the development of the company. And now I know that when people talk about Aardman and the style, they're very much talking about the style that Nick exemplified there in Creature Comforts. But that film also has several elements to it, which are quite important to the things I'm talking about. The fact that it's stop motion animation, the fact that it's clay animation, plasticine animation, and the use of the real soundtracks. So all those things that Nick was playing with are things that we'd already started to develop, and those are three of the things that became the hallmarks of the Aardman company. So now the next slide is this reminds me of what George was talking about, really, because here we see the teenage Peter Lord and David Sproxton. And any of you that know anything about filmmaking at all might recognise in the middle of the picture that strange shape is a film camera, and it's pointing downwards. And that tells me that we were making one of our first ever films, which was a conventional cell animated film. So when we made that film, we were schoolboys. We had no training at all. I think we were 17. We had no training. There were very few books around, but we read whatever we could. And it proved to be fundamental, again, to our career. As we made a short film, and here I have to give my second credit, and there are credits everywhere, as I say. And that credit really is to the BBC producer, Patrick Dowling, who had the nerve or the inspired vision to pay for what we'd done, to buy our first film. And at the same time as I credit Pat Dowling, I should also need to credit Dave's father, Vernon, who frankly put us in the way of Pat Dowling. So these things are highly connected. But anyway, never mind that slight dash of nepotism in there. The truth is that we got a chance to show our very primitive work to a BBC producer, and he bought it and showed it on TV. And in doing that, that gave us just the encouragement to continue. You know, I'm not saying for one moment that we did it for the money or indeed for the career. Neither's true. We didn't know that the career was coming. We weren't thinking in terms of career. We were just thinking in terms of making films and showing films to an audience. And this is what we did. So I think I'll show you the next clip, please, which is the film that we were making in this photograph. So 17 years old, just starting out in animation as a new hobby, and I think hobby is the right word for it, and working in a very traditional fashion, two-dimensional, old-fashioned hand-drawn animation. So let's play that clip, please. See, that's what if you launch your career. It's very. I find it fascinating to watch from many points of view. Not least because it's technically inept. You know, it was shot on film on that camera that we can see here, and if you look objectively, there's a strange flare which comes from the surface of the celluloid that we were drawing on. And then the animation itself is pretty lame, you know, and the timing is poor. But it's quite a good idea. It's quite a good idea done quite well, and that was enough for us to get our foot in the door and start what became a career. But it's not where our career went at all. No, we moved in quite another direction. We moved into the direction of 3 dimensions. And this picture, this photograph, shows Ray Harryhausen. Some of you will know that name very well. A few sad, benighted souls won't recognise it. Ray Harryhausen was the a stop-motion genius who created all the animation in a series of sort of fantasy movies featuring Sinbad and Jason and the Argonauts, these kind of films. This is Ray as a young man, and that's not King Kong he's working with, but it is Mighty Joe Young. And Ray was, when he was a young man, I think he was 15 or something, he saw the original King Kong when it was first released in Los Angeles, and was blown away by the miracle of it all, by the way that this monster, this ferocious monster, was brought to life and was seen interacting with tiny people and fighting with the Tyrannosaurus Rex and all this sort of amazing stuff. That was what inspired Ray, and Ray then carried that tradition forward. I met him, and it's a source of great pride and sort of wonder to me, really, to think that I with Ray Harryhausen, the man who shook hands with Willis O'Brien, who created King Kong. And Willis O'Brien was right there at the start of the 20th century. He was there inventing the technique of stop-motion animation, puppet animation. So Ray took it on, and for about 50 years, he was a one-man industry, most extraordinary talent and incredible drive. He did on his own. You know, when you're watching a movie now, you watch your average movie, any old movie that's got 10,000 robots killing 10,000 aliens, that kind of movie, and when it gets to the end, the credits then run for about 5 minutes with all the people that have made that possible. The hundreds and hundreds of people that made it possible. Ray Harryhausen did it himself on his own. And as a boy, when I was at school, I saw this one, which was Jason and the Argonauts. And I just thought that was, I don't know what word to use, magic, unbelievable. How on earth, how is it possible to put this kind of image on the screen? And the answer is that obviously the man on the stones there was fighting thin air, and Ray came back to the studio and projected the film of the fighter frame by frame, and then sort of matched it to these foreground puppets of the skeletons. And it's an extraordinary piece of work. It's hard to exaggerate the sheer the focus of Ray to do that, especially in the pre-digital era. I was lucky enough to go to his 90th birthday party in London at the Royal Festival Hall, I think it was. And so he was there, and there were credits, there were passionate votes of thanks from people like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and James Cameron and all these, and Peter Jackson himself, all these kind of giants of cinema who were all influenced by this man. So I too was influenced by this man, and delighted to meet him. And here he is late in life when he came into the studio. obviously riding a sheep. And I would point out that I didn't ask him to do this, to take this frankly embarrassing position. It was his idea. So a great man with a great talent, and really influential in the sense that I saw his work as a young man and realised the potential of this art form, this stop motion animation, this art form where the animator takes a puppet and moves it and takes a frame and moves it and takes a frame and in this slow, careful way creates magic, creates life. However, having shown you Ray and having gone on about him a bit and enthused about him, having showed you Aardman, the two-dimensional animation, we didn't go with two-dimensional animation, nor did we ever pursue exactly what Ray Harryhausen was pursuing, which was this kind of special effects work, really, of bringing monsters and stuff to life. I've personally never animated a dinosaur or a monster in my life. Never managed that. No, instead, I go on to another branch of the same business, if you like. And this is the Magic Roundabout, created by Sarah Jan. Oh, and I should have said, note to self, I should have said that I was crediting Ray Harryhausen as absolutely another of those the third key person to thank for our career. And I think I need to stick together Sarah Jan, who created the Magic Roundabout, Ivor Wood, who worked on the Magic Roundabout and then went on to do the Wombles and Postman Pat. And then people like Oliver Postgate and Peter Firmin, that George mentioned, and Buren Hardwick. And these were the people that made the films of my, actually not childhood, but early teens for me, or maybe about 11 or 12 when I started watching these things. They weren't made for me, I know that, but I was fascinated by the technique. And frankly, to be perfectly honest, to make something like the Magic Roundabout, seemed possible, whereas to make a film like one of Ray Harryhausen's films seemed and was utterly impossible to somebody in the early 20s. So I credit this generation of puppet animators who made a whole series of films that were popular when I was a kid, when that was pretty well the only way between this sort of film and with Ray Harryhausen's film. It was pretty well the only way that you could watch a three-dimensional animated character on screen. Now the same job is done by computers, of course, and we see three-dimensional animated characters the whole time, just often so cleverly done that it's invisible that they are animated, but they are. But these were the guys that influenced us. But still, although this was something to aspire to, it wasn't quite where we went. We went in another direction again, and I'll ask you to play the next clip, please. So there we have Morph and Chaz, yucking it up. That is from a very recent Morph story. So although he was created in heaven in 76, blimey, 1976, yes, he's still going today, still being animated, certainly in 2020, and I hope again in 2021. So going strong. What's the thing about Morph? What's the key thing? Plasticine, modelling clay. Frankly, that was the special thing about Morph. And when you work with modelling clay, I have a visual aid right here. Where is it? There it is. Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's my visual aid. Now, see the size of him in my hand. He is the size he appears to be on screen. And I just wanted to briefly mention that animation is the most magnificent thing to do. It is because it is godlike. I will say nothing less. Like, my claim is nothing less. You create a world, and you populate the world, and you bring it to life. And that is an incredibly powerful thing to do. Wonderful, joyous, powerful thing to do. Even doing it badly is powerful. And kids, very young children, can get a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from animating, okay, plasticine if they're feeling ambitious, but Lego, Playmobil, any old thing, anything. They take a toy, a puppet, and go through this process and then bring it to life. I mean, what could be more powerful? You are a god. And plasticine proved to be particularly good at it. Partly, I guess, because it was so accessible. The sort of puppets that Ray Harryhausen made, those dinosaurs in King Kong and so on, they required real skill to make those puppets. I couldn't start to do that. And they would take skill and time and expertise. Morph was just then, and it is here in my hand, just made of modelling clay, nothing else. So, well, it's quick and cheap to make. Yes, you need to be good. You need to be a good sculptor, but it's quick and cheap to make. And because he's made of clay, and because the size of him and because the size of he's in my hand, it did seem like an excellent metaphor for the animator being a god. And later on, I made a short film to celebrate that. So let's have a look at the next clip, please. There's the process right there. The lump of clay, the hand that touches it and brings it to life, and that's the joy of animation. I say clay. My next credit, my fifth credit, goes to this bearded cove here. This is William Harbert. William Harbert, a man from, actually, I think it was a Geordie, actually. I think it came from North Shields originally, but he ended up in Bath. At Bath, he was the head teacher at an art school, and he created plasticine, which is my other visual aid. Plasticine. Yeah, sorry, that's it. William Harbert created plasticine. He created it so that artists could work on the sculptures and then stay flexible, whereas, of course, conventional clay dries out. And fantastic invention, a wonderful invention. And he had a factory later by the canal side in Bathampton where he made this stuff, and it was running up until I think the 80s when sadly they went bust, which is a real shame because it was a great company. Oh, I've got some great pictures of. Yes, there was they had when I went to visit them, they had a museum of all their packaging down the years. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And it was a wonderful, extraordinary celebration of graphic design throughout the 20th century. And actually, I don't know, there's that child happily there making a dog. When they marketed it to me and Dave Sproxton, because we were working together making Morph, the packets then were quite boring. But on one side, they had happy children making an elephant or something out of plasticine, and on the other side they had a bloke with a beard and a smock who was clearly an artist, and he was making a bust of some famous person. So it was marketed as being for children and for artists equally, and it just proves to be a really, really essential part of our career because animating with modelling clay was the thing we did that was special. I put this in because it's a reference to the God thing and plasticine all in one. Excellent Larson cartoon. Always makes me laugh. So as I said, it was yes, yes. Oh, sorry, no, that one. That one. Now, okay. Now, here's a very important one. I think I'm going to call this number 6 of essential influences. When Dave and I were still at school, so we were 16 or 17, we saw this thing on TV. And what it was a lump of modelling clay that grew and routinely ate another lump of modelling clay, and then they both squished together, and then one grew into a tree, and then one grew into a dinosaur. It was just random evolutions. And in fact, the film was called Clay, or the Origin of Species. And we saw a clip of it on TV, and it's funny to think now in the 21st century that when you saw something on TV back in the day, you couldn't see it again. I mean, it was almost impossible because they didn't do repeats, certainly not of children's TV. They didn't do repeats, and there was no convenient home recording. So really, we saw this, and it flashed by, and all it did was leave an image on the retina, or on the mental retina, an idea. It left an idea. And I wanted to, I'm very aware, I'm talking about all the people that have, in different ways, made it possible for us to do what we do. This was really important. I never knew who it was by, and only in the era of Google did I one day find it. After lots of false starts, I found it on Google. Oh God, that was the one. That was the thing I saw. And I saw it was called Clay, or the Origin of Species, and I saw the director's name, Eli Noyes, and I thought, I assumed, because it's black and white and it looks frankly super primitive, I thought it was done ages ago, back in the 50s or something like that. I looked him up. I looked up Eli Noyes and was saddened to find that he died. He'd been a professor of architecture at Harvard, I think. Unsurprisingly, but anyway, he died, so that was a shame. Because I would have liked to have, thanked him for this single small contribution, this thing that we glimpsed, and which gave us, it inspired us. We never made films like this either, but we were inspired to pick up modelling clay and animate it because of this film. And I was talking about this one day at a film festival in San Francisco. And after the show, a man came up to me, this guy, and he said, well, I'm Eli Noyes, and I'm not dead at all. And by Jove, he wasn't. So, in fact, not only was he not dead, he was looking pretty good, actually. And I was so delighted to be able to just thank him for the inspiration. So, I'm going to go back down. Okay. So here we are. Back to Creature Comforts, having reached the sort of middle point, and it's puppet animation as inspired by Ray Harryhausen. It's modelling clay thanks to William Harvest that invented the damn stuff. It's modelling clay animated thanks to Eli Noyes, who suggested it to us. The style of the thing, that lion talking, was the words were real. They were unscripted. They were spontaneous from a Brazilian student that lived in Bristol. And the idea of taking spontaneously recorded unscripted words and animating to match it, again, was somebody else's idea. It comes from John and Faith Hubley, American animators. And they sowed that idea in our heads. And two people in Bristol, Colin Thomas and Bill Mather, both working at the BBC at the time, they took on the idea again. And Colin Thomas commissioned us to make the first film in this series, if you can call it a series. And the first film was Down and Out, recorded at the Salvation Army Hospital in Broadweir. And that film, which again looks incredibly primitive now, was the ancestor of this film, which won the Oscars and really started our career. So, as I said, the start of our career, and there was a lot more to come. There was 3 more Oscars for Nick. There was another, I believe, sort of 9 Oscars for Oscar nominations, I should say, for Aardman, so plenty of that. There was we took the same technique onto the big screen and made a whole series of we made 7 or 8 animated feature films now. No studio in the UK has done anything like that before, that scale. And we've made beloved characters like Shaun the Sheep, and we've also done things quite radically different, like 1111, which is a video game. So we do now, tons and tons of stuff. What can I say? Tons and tons of stuff in many styles. But all at the heart of it inspired by an enthusiasm for storytelling, a love of animation, because it is a very special way of making a film. It has its weird side, it has its challenges. It's not fast, but it has this incredible, magical, godlike power, which I love. So my final credit, if you like, is everybody else, because everyone else at Aardman, including you, Heather, because it's such a team effort now. Dave and I started it. Nick provided this incredible bolt of energy in the middle years, but then it just became a celebration of so many hands and brains and eyes that have contributed to this work. I'd just like to show you a clip now. It's just fun. It's hard to understand sometimes, but it is behind the scenes of the film The Pirates that we made, oh gosh, about 8 or 9 years ago now. And it just is a celebration of all the people involved. So play that clip, please. Happy days indeed, happy days. And there, quite handily, is a picture of the crew, the enormous crew, just to celebrate how many people are involved and what a wonderful process it is. And that takes me quite neatly, I think, to the last thing I was going to refer to. God knows we haven't got long. That when Dave and I came to consider leaving, or perhaps put it another way, realised that we were probably going to die one day if we didn't do something about it. That we wanted the company to carry on in the same spirit. That was the most important thing to us. So, not so. And we thought that all those people that have been involved for all those years, it's been such a group process, such a collaborative process, that we moved the company into employee ownership. So if you think the alternative would have been some conventional trade sale or something like that, and that's what people do. I'm told although I find it incredible that people start companies with that in mind, with selling it in mind, which is so far from the spirit in which we started Aardman. We started Aardman. Why did we start Aardman? We started it so we had a bit of money. We kept it going because it was fun and it was a challenge, and then we kept it going because we were really good at it and we were having a lot of fun with it and we were employing people and we felt responsibility to people and we wanted to better the last thing we'd done and keep building, scores of reasons. But that's why we did it. And the one reason we didn't ever do it, and we never dreamt of, was to sell it off to make money with it. That was never the plan. So we're not saints. I certainly, Dave and I both took money out of the company, but we handed the company over so that now it is owned by the employees. It's owned by a trust, in fact, and when you're an employee, you are a member of that trust. And I'm very proud of it. It's been another exciting adventure for us. It's the partners, as they're now called, have reacted, come really, really strongly, getting involved, getting stuck in. We have a thing like it, we call it partners rep group, where where their voice can be heard by the board and by the managing director. And I'm told that employee-owned companies are more productive and more efficient and often more profitable, and that's great. I'm happy with that. But the real point I think for us was there's a sense of fairness and a sense of justice, and to save this company that we frankly love so much, and didn't want to see it become just an asset for somebody. No, there's Dave and me, presumably at the time of the big signing. So I think, is that just about right? I think I'm about done. I've rushed through it all, but there we go.
Thank you so much, Peter, for such a passionate talk. It's really great to share your journey with us. And we've got lots of questions coming in, so I'm going to read them out. First one's from Steve, our Vice Chancellor. He says, "Thank you. What an engaging, inspiring and honest human story. Looking back, do you have any 'I wish I'd done that' memories or regrets?"
Very few, really, very few, actually. In fact, honestly, none. I mean, I think I'm of a optimistic disposition anyway. So in terms of the company, no, honestly, what more could you have expected? When you think how small our ambitions were when we started, how simple they were, we came to Bristol full-time in '76 and set up. We had a very small room above a shop, and we did what we could. And as I said before, we scrabbled around a bit. But if you said to those two guys in their early 20s that one day we'd have this, frankly, this empire, this animation empire, we wouldn't have dreamt of it. It would have seemed absolutely impossible. So no, I genuinely have very, very, very few regrets.
Brilliant. We got quite a lot of questions coming in for you, Peter. So I hope that yourself and the audience don't mind sticking around a little bit longer. So we're probably going to overrun. That's okay. Yeah. So the next question is from Chloe, who says she reckons that Aardman hides references or Easter eggs in the films. And do you have a favourite? And are there any that maybe haven't been discovered by the public yet?
Oh, blimey! I'm sorry. That's a really good question. And when you think about these things, oh Lord, I can't think of anything hilarious. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I should think of something, but something that's really like in the Pirates. We go into Charles Darwin's house. To be clear, I respect Charles Darwin as a historical figure very much, but in the film we take the piss out of him outrageously. And but his house is quite substantial. It's a sort of Gothic mansion somewhere in London, and it's full of more or less all the contents of the British Museum are in there, I think, and the Natural History Museum mostly. Actually, both natural history and ethnography is all stuck in there. And you know, this is so fiddly. There was a famous fake fossil in the Victorian era. I can't remember its name. I'm sorry. Somebody faked it, like a Piltdown Down man, but not another fake. And so the model makers faithfully reproduced this thing to stick it on Darwin's wall. Now, as I say, is that a joke? No, but it's typical of the sort of thing. I mean, it happens everywhere. When you look at Shaun the Sheep, I was on the set of Shaun the Sheep one day, and it's very amusing to go on the set because there are rolling fields everywhere, and you can stand behind a hedge like this, lean over the hedge. So I was leaning over the hedge for a comic photograph, and I looked down, and at the bottom of the hedge was some piece of agricultural machinery. I don't know what it was, a Wurzel grinder or something. Who knows what it was? I don't know what it was. But it was rusted, and the farmer had jammed it in a hole in the hedge to keep the sheep in. No one will ever see that. I mean, I don't think they will ever see that. But it's there, and it's there because we love putting them there. That's the truth. And I'm sorry I can't think of much better examples than those.
Oh, I think that's really brilliant. It's being born the year of Morph myself in 1976, and I remember after I left Aardman to go to UE, one of my friends, Andy James, modelled me a Morph, and it's still on my mantelpiece 14 years later. Amy, what are our animations? Sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Sometimes they survive.
Yes.
And sometimes they crack. And it's because it's weird because everyone thinks plasticine is soft, which it is. It's bendy, but it dries out. The oil dries out, and then sometimes one will stand around and it'll just abruptly snap in half, which is quite tragic, actually.
Yeah. Amy, one of our third-year animation students, has a question, and it's quite a popular one. What's the one piece of advice you would give to animators just about to enter the industry?
It was very interesting hearing George early on because the way he was talking, the things he was talking about, absolutely, totally rang true to me. I mean, he was absolutely right. What did he say? He said, make. It's true, isn't it? I mean, because there are two reasons to keep making. One is because you get better at it. It's funny with animation. If you were playing a classical instrument, violin, piano, hoping to be in an orchestra, you would practice. Kids practice hours a day, and hundreds of hours a month. They just do. It's the way it goes. It's quite accepted and it's normal. And so that when they get to join an orchestra, they have done their 10,000 hours of practice. They really have. They've done it so much. They've just done it. And in an ideal world, for me, an animator would do the same thing. An animator would animate every day, and by doing that, just simply acquire the skill. In fact, I know it happens. I mean, when I look online now, I follow sort of various stop motion groups, and you'll see stuff by amateurs, which is really pretty damn impressive in model making and animation. So one reason to keep doing it is to get good. The other reason to keep doing it is to get your name out there, because this is what is obviously possible now that wasn't possible in our day. The only way you could get started back in the day was someone would commission you somehow to get stuff on TV. And the first animated films that we did for the BBC, I think they paid £25 for them, which was okay, at those days. But you don't get rich, but it was a way in. But now you don't need that way in, do you? Because you can do it yourself. So I'm a huge fan of the idea of just doing it, getting it out there, getting your name known, and networking. It's so important in our business, and again, it's with Instagram and LinkedIn and all these things, it's possible to network very effectively. So do that.
Okay. Rachel submitted a question, and she would like to ask, why do you think Bristol has become a centre for creativity?
Well, I can only say it's a great city for it. I mean, it's well placed geographically. It sits in a good place. There's a vibe about Bristol, isn't there? There just always has been ever since I moved down here. A vibe in music and street art, of course, and in animation and in theatre. There's something about it. I mean, some people visiting Bristol, people outsiders, strange outsiders, sometimes think it's a bit kind of I don't know, a bit sort of new age or something like that, which I don't see it that way at all. I just see it as a dynamic place, and we're fortunate. We're a fortunate city for sure, prosperous city. Two huge universities. These are all good things. I always think we could do more. Heaven knows we could do more. And luckily there are always people around who have the vision and inspiration to push on and do the next thing, because that's the creative life of the city depends on numbers. I think there's a kind of a glowing ember effect. If you've got a fire with sufficient embers, glowing embers, then you can pile more wood on and it'll catch. If the embers burn too low and it's dusty and cool, it's very hard to get a twig to catch. Bristol has that effect, that effect of glowing embers, so that new ideas can catch and do well. But it's true also that you do depend on individuals with vision, and I think Dave and I did that accidentally, although we didn't know we were doing it when we came to Bristol. But we came to Bristol, set up this small company. Bristol was not the obvious place to be, but it's quite interesting. Why are we here? Why are we in Bristol? Because I was born here was one reason, and Dave's girlfriend was at university here. That was the other reason. These are the fine, carefully honed, logical reasons why we're in Bristol rather than anywhere else. But also we had fond memories of it. We knew it was a good city. And we came, again, with no intention of creating any kind of empire. But as we built, I know that did have a spin-off effect, as with the natural history business in Bristol as well, classically.
Okay. We've had a quite popular question. This one's anonymous. I don't know who's posted it, but it's, why did you call it Aardman?
Splendid reason, splendid question. Well, luckily we showed that cartoon I showed, the drawn animation cartoon I showed right at the start. That was Aardman. But how would you ever know that? Nobody would. I mean, really, Dave and I, we created this superhero. Before the company, actually, it was a joke. We were 16 years old. We were at school together. It was kind of a joke. He was called Aardman, which for no other reason than that we thought that aardvark was a very funny name for an animal. So we took the Aard of aardvark and the man of Superman, and came up with this name Aardman, and it's ludicrous because he has no aardvark attribute. He doesn't eat ants. He doesn't live in the burrow. He doesn't come from South Africa. But it sounded funny to us then, and so that was it. And then that first animation I showed you, the BBC, we sold it to the BBC. They contacted us. They said, to whom shall we make out the check? We're talking about the 20th century now. who should we make the check out to? And we said Aardman Animations. We discussed Pete and Dave Animations. We discussed Lord Sproxton, and had we chosen these, then our names would be really, really well known and we'd be really famous. But we chose Aardman, that means just about nothing.
And it works so well, doesn't it?
It worked. Yeah, we I remember one year. I can remember we had a cold studio in Hot Wells. I remember vividly sitting there, going through the list, trying to think of a new proper grown-up name. But we stuck with that. We stuck with Aardman, obviously. And then when I see it now on a film, I feel great. I feel very proud of it. It seems like a strong name, even though it means nothing.
Yeah. Another question we've got here is, will Morph have his own trail around Bristol at some point in the future?
Oh, yeah, totally. He should, shouldn't he? He totally should. Yeah. I would like that. I would love that. I don't know. The real answer is I don't know. The other trail, Gromit was so prodigiously famous around the world and Shaun the Sheep too. That this was for the Grand Appeal for the Children's Hospital charity, and because they had an international appeal, that was a very strong thing to sell. Morph, who I love dearly, he's not as well known. He's not. Still, he should totally have his own trail. Totally.
Okay, we got a question from, I think it's from Jemina. She says, "Hi Peter, thanks for your time. How do you determine whether to use claymation or CGI to tell a particular story?"
Well, that is a good question. Yes, that's very interesting indeed. Because we're making those decisions a lot, but animation is a slow process. So to say we make them a lot, the decisions span long periods. I can only say that now there's a huge enthusiasm for stop motion internally within the studio. I mean, when we get new ideas, tell you what happens. We get a new idea, and we think, oh, yeah, that's interesting. That could be maybe it could be CG, or it could be some sort of some hybrid thing, and then the potential directors normally say, "Oh, please let it be stop motion." Because why? Because it is, because making a stop motion film is so much better than making a CG film. I mean, I'm sorry to CG people out there, full respect, lovely work, brilliant work, love your work, congratulations. But stop motion is more fun to make, because when you saw in that clip of the pirates, it's well, when it's not, when coronavirus isn't rampant, it's sociable, it's physical. You work with your hands. It's dirty. There's metal and plasticine and resin and latex and wood and steel. It's craft. It's craft, and there's a bunch of people, and you can all, it's very, very collaborative and so on. And the actual location, the studio location, is like a paradise. I can tell you, it really is. And again, we can't enjoy it properly just now because of the sodding COVID. We can't enjoy it properly, but when we can, it'll be such a pleasure to go back onto the studio floor again. I say that, of course, people are on the studio floor now, but in the safest possible conditions. So therefore, me tipping up as a tourist is not such a good idea. But anyway, you get these sets. You got a huge, big old studio. It's divided up by wooden partitions and black drapes. It looks like nothing, but then you pull aside the black drape, and you peer in, and inside it's like Aladdin's cave. There's some beautiful place, some amazing structure, beautifully lit with lovely puppets on it. And so So that's why we do. So people want to do that, and the directors want to do it. There are certain subjects, and we've got a couple on the books, which honestly, it's not a good idea. It'd be so difficult to do in stop motion, and so much be easier and freer, and have much more visual potential to do it CG. So, to be clear, I was joking. I was joking earlier on. I'm a big fan of CG. We've got a fabulous series, a kids series, which I won't name because I never know what I'm allowed to say. There's what's officially out there, but a really great kids series that we are just starting on, which is entirely CG, and that's great. And I'm going to be so proud of that when it's done. We've got some more stop motion things in at the moment in the studio, but we have absolutely CG plans as well. So yes, there are practical considerations, especially scale, spectacle. If the story needs scale and spectacle and fluidity and so on, then CG is good. But if the story is all about character, then stop motion is great. It's very funny that we love doing stop motion, and I know that the public like watching it. I'm happy. I'm delighted to say the public like watching it, and they don't just like watching it. They take it to their heart. They care about it as we do. So that's great. I'm so happy that's the case. But CG can do so much more. Can do so much more now. The kind of stuff that they do at Pixar is jaw-dropping, isn't it? The sort of worlds they can create. It's amazing. So I have full respect. The only one that makes me a bit queasy is a studio I greatly love, which is Leica in Oregon, just because their films are so perfect that they stop looking like stop motion. I think that's kind of strange. I think, for me, here's a serious point. There's magic in stop motion, and I use magic in a quite old-fashioned sense. I mean, like in the sense of a magician, a bloke that comes on stage and pulls a rabbit out of a hat. Like it's impossible. It's a cheat, but you cannot see how it's done, and you believe it. And to know how it's done and to believe it, no, to see it and believe it, even though you know it's not true. I think there's magic in there, and you see it also with puppetry, like with the Muppets, Muppets. Kermit the Frog. He's a frog made of some green fabric. It's quite clear, and his eyes don't move. He's not alive, but when he starts moving, by God, he is. To all intents and purposes, he is alive, and that's why it's magic, because you know he's a puppet, and he's alive, and that's fantastic. That's magic, which I don't think you get with. You don't get quite the same thing with CG. Whatever magic, whatever glorious visions you get, what is a beautiful CG film except a beautiful film with great characterization? Yes, absolutely great. Story and characterization. These are the so important. Acting. These are things we care about. But what else is it? Just a bunch of zeros and ones in a computer.
Yeah. So I think we're probably on to the last question for you, Peter.
Okay.
And Neil has the following question. He says, how important are budgets in your work? Are there times when maybe budgets have A, got in the way of a better outcome for maybe a film? or B, the lack of budget has inspired creativity?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I hope the latter. I hope the latter. I mean, how important are they? They're bloody important. They really are. And yet, I can sit here and honestly say that I can't even read a budget, which I can't. I mean, I can look at it. I can look at it and nod intelligently as if I understand it, but really I don't. I certainly don't make budgets. And skilled people, very smart, skilled people make budgets, and it's it works. It works always. Sometimes it limits the budget limits what you do. Sometimes, of course, and then is the budget in control of creativity? No, I don't. But no, it's not. It's not. But it is there as a I don't know what a check. It's part of the picture, and creative people have to work around it because budgets aren't infinitely extendable. Although sometimes it seems they are more and more, but they're not. They're not infinitely extendable. Now, but the other way of looking at it, spur to creativity. Yes, I would hope that it can. It absolutely can be. It's here at Aardman, and with my extreme age, I it is true that I have a lot of experience working different ways, working with small crews, working with tiny budgets and that sort of thing, and so I know that that in a way things can be done cheaper, but it is very hard when you get to a big studio like this, when you're carrying a lot of overhead. It's hard for us to work. It's hard for us to be cheaper, so we have to get them to up the budget or do a bit less, or otherwise be very, very smart. But you young people out there starting out, you really can make a virtue of lack of budget, I think, and do as much as you can. If I mean, I know this sounds patronising, but I see it the whole time. You see it with student films made on a small budget, and they've done amazing things. And you think, wow, respect. You've achieved far more for your few bucks than we did back in the day. I really do see some great stuff done.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Peter. It's just gone 1:45, so we are going to bring this to a close. I'd like to say thank you so much, Peter, for answering all the questions so thoroughly and for a really, truly and memorable and inspiring talk this evening. It's been really great to see the passion and creativity behind Aardman. And I would also like to thank everyone watching at home. I hope you've had a lovely evening with us. And please stay safe and have a good evening.